This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by SAIC. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, the people piece of the shutdown dilemma, the missing link in AI integration, and the forgotten side of the government shutdown. Welcome to Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. The Congressional Budget Office estimates about 750,000 people are on furlough now because of the shutdown. Federal leaders say that number, though, is likely to ebb and flow as the shutdown continues. Jeff Neal is principal at ChiefHRO and former Chief Human Capital Officer at the Department of Homeland Security. Welcome back, Jeff. It's great to see you. What's the cause of the numbers shifting? Some people furloughed at the beginning of the shutdown. As it continues, some folks will go back. Some folks that were working when it started will be furloughed and so on. What's driving that?
Well, I think, Francis, what happens is you've got people who are accepted and who are working because their jobs are safety, security, protecting life and property, etc. You have some people who are working because they're not paid out of appropriated money. Their money comes from a revolving fund of some sort, like GSA's building funds, the defense-wide working capital fund. What you run into, though, is those working capital funds are frequently replenished with appropriated money because their customers get appropriated dollars. So you may look at an agency like the Defense Logistics Agency, for example, where most of the people are not paid out of appropriated money, but the money that feeds that non-appropriated account is appropriated dollars. And because their customers don't have money, they can't buy things, and because they can't buy things, the fund starts depleting. And then at some point there's no money available, and then those people are going to be furloughed because there's no money for them. You also find cases where people are brought back because they've discovered that something is creating a problem, that it's putting either property or life at risk or vital programs, and so those people might come back. So that number will go up and down as long as this furlough lasts, or this lapse in appropriations lasts.
One of the things that came out of the 2019 shutdown, the longest one in history, 34 days if I recall correctly, was that Congress passed a law that provided that federal employees, whether they were furloughed or not,
right,
would be paid for the time that they missed after appropriations were reinstated. Guidance from OMB this week sounds contrary to that. What should federal employees think, in your mind, in your view, about what the possibility of them getting paid versus not getting paid as a result of the shutdown would be?
Well, I think when you're looking at a difference of opinion between the law and some politician, err on the side of believing the law. You know, politicians can say whatever they want, but saying it doesn't make it so. And the law does say that federal employees who are furloughed do get back pay for that time. And that was passed because in the past, they actually had to put in the appropriations bills every time there was a shutdown. By the way, the federal employees will get paid. So this law, which was actually signed by President Trump, it actually provides that they will get back pay. Now, Russ Vaught at OPM has kind of made it clear that he thinks they don't necessarily have to get paid. But again, saying that doesn't make it so. The law says that they will. And the Constitution actually does specifically address what it refers to as ex post facto laws, retroactive laws, and it prohibits them in Article 1. So Congress doesn't have the authority to retroactively take things from people. So if they decided, you know, for example, in whatever bill they create to resolve this lapse, that they're going to repeal that, that would repeal it prospectively for future shutdowns, but it wouldn't repeal the law for this shutdown. For this shutdown, that law still applies. I think it's extremely likely, probably a 99% likelihood, that those employees are going to get paid, and they shouldn't worry that they're going to be missing a week or two or a month of pay. I'd hate to see them worried about that.
You were in government during the 2013 shutdown. What did you and your colleagues in the human capital community take away from that contributed to the body of knowledge about how to handle this and how to manage people through and after a shutdown?
Well, the biggest thing was communicating with people and making certain they understood what was expected. They understood whether they were accepted or not. They needed to understand that what we told them could change as circumstances changed, and communicating with them, sharing the information about what was going on, and doing that as rapidly as possible. And then doing the shutdown, which has already been done, in an orderly way, and then standing things up again in an orderly way, because you can't just, you don't just flip a switch and all of a sudden the entire government is operating again. So I think that's really an important part of it. It's a messy process. You do learn as you go. And when you learn a lot in one shutdown, it helps you for the next one, but you're going to learn something new in the next shutdown. Something that didn't happen 12 years ago is going to happen this time. And so they're going to have to be flexible. They're going to have to pay attention to what's going on and adapt as they go.
I went back and looked at some of the coverage that we did on the 2019 shutdown, and we talked a lot at that time on the programs that I hosted then about what was happening in the moment, and not enough, I don't think, about what happens and what people should be prepared for when the government reopens. And as you say, you don't just flip a switch. What are the things that people maybe don't anticipate that they'll have to deal with, when the government reopens?
Well, one of the things is that a lot of the stuff that federal employees do is going to keep accumulating whether they're there or not. So people who might have been kind of overworked before are now going to have a backlog of stuff when they come back. And they're going to have customers who expect things to be done instantly, and they're not going to be able to do things instantly. So they're going to probably have to start juggling priorities to figure out what to do first to get things going again. You may find that, maybe I'm working with you and you're not viewing what I'm working on as the priority. You've got a bigger priority you want to deal with, but my priority is really important to me. And so we're going to have to try to figure out how we synchronize our return to work and our getting things done again. And that can get pretty messy, actually. So I think that's going to be one of the difficult things for people to deal with.
What have you seen as the successful way or ways to try to navigate that messiness? And who are the stakeholders that are involved in all of that? It strikes me that just keeping it within individual work units probably isn't the right way to go.
Not necessarily, and it's maybe in some cases not even keeping it within individual agencies, because a lot of the work that happens in government happens in what we refer to as the interagency, as though that's a real thing. It's actually the relationships between the different agencies that intersect in a lot of different ways. And those folks are going to have to try to work out between different agencies what the priorities are going to be and what they're going to pay attention to first. So I think that's going to be really important. Within agencies, obviously the senior leadership of the agency can set some priorities and tell people, here's what we want to do first. And they need to be thinking about that right now. Most of them probably are. And they need to set some priorities and let people know what they should do first, and then how to ease back into getting the work done.
What's the best way for leaders to communicate with people to the extent that they're allowed to during the shutdown, and what are the messages that are important to communicate when people do come back?
So during the shutdown, they can only communicate with them about things relative to the shutdown that are essential for the employee to know, like when they should come back to work. They can't communicate with them about the work because they're shut down. And there's been specific guidance issued on that over many shutdowns that tells them, you can't be out there dealing with the employees and telling them, okay, here's what we want you to do as soon as you get back, and we want you to think about this. That's forbidden. You can't do that. But anything related to the shutdown itself and what the employees need to know about that, they can do. And they can be prepared on day one when people come back with a whole list of things that they want to communicate. And that's what most of them will end up doing.
Jeff, it's always great to have you on. Thanks for your insight.
Happy to be here.
You can read more about workforce issues from the shutdown on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the missing link in AI integration. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
The agility is really going to be key for all of us supporting the DoD and the warfighter, and building that culture within the company to fail quickly. Come with the mindset that what I bring today may not be the final solution, but it gets me down a path to solve those problems. not being so rigid in we need to go after a specific capability, knowing that that capability may change. But then you also have to build in that resilience of what you're delivering and do the proper testing along the way. So it's kind of a combination of old and new.
Welcome back. The federal government's most recent AI use case inventory includes more than 1,700 examples. This year's use case inventory will be the fourth one the federal government's released. Lauren Knausenberger is Executive Vice President and Chief Innovation Officer at SAIC. She's former Chief Information Officer of the Air Force. Lauren, welcome. It's great to have you back on the program. What are the differences between integrating AI applications and other types of applications into agency workflows?
Absolutely. So there are some things that are very similar in that you have some sort of an offering. Maybe it's open source, maybe it's software that you are installing in your environment that you're operating, or that you're leveraging in a cloud, either your own or a public cloud. And then, of course, you are thinking about, first and foremost, how am I going to get the most use out of whatever this offering is? How do I solve the most important problem that I have? So those things are absolutely the same. Also in government, of course, you have a few decades of equipment that are generally lying around. You do have more modern systems that you're interacting with, but also a good number of legacy systems collecting data, and a lot of our defense enterprise, of course. You know, you have some older systems that, some of which actually still work pretty well, but they do need to interact with more modern systems. And so getting everything to talk, of course, is a challenge across the board, making sure that you know what data is most important, making sure that you know what questions and missions you are trying to, effect. But what gets a little bit different when you're integrating AI is that with kind of mission IT, enterprise IT environments, you tend to have at least a relatively more stable set of data feeds, at least. The data changes all the time, but you largely know where the data's coming from. You largely kind of understand the data set. With AI, you have a growing number of models available to you. And the models they do different things. And as data changes and as models change, you do need to move out models that aren't as important anymore and heavily leverage those that are more important. Sometimes you have to retrain them. You have to, of course, constantly be thinking about it from a cyber perspective as well, ensuring you're not subject to data poisoning or any other type of, the typical things that you need to do to protect an AI model. You also have to worry, just like with traditional systems, about traceability, but even more so with AI. How did the algorithm go through the logic that it did to get to the answer that it's giving you? And also having a bit of, you have to have a little bit of different expertise to think through what type of model am I using, and to really orchestrate and govern those across whatever plane you're looking at. So for instance, humans tend to interact a little better with LLMs. With ChatGPT kind of taking over the world, so to speak, people can now speak to a computer as well as a really brilliant developer in some cases. You can just say, hey, can you go do this? And it can build any number of things just speaking to you. But there are models that are better at interpreting images, for instance. If you ask ChatGPT to interpret an image, it might not do that as well as some other models might. Other models might do better at looking at sensor data and removing noise, and probably interacting with a human to understand which sensors maybe we trust a little bit more than others, bringing in some of those operational context items as well.
One of the things that you and I talked about when you were at the Air Force was the fact that you wanted to make sure that the force didn't adopt artificial intelligence for the sake of artificial intelligence. How did you, and how would you advise others to go about analyzing problems and determining whether AI fits the problem rather than the problem fitting the technology?
Absolutely. So I almost think of this in two different ways. In general, when you're solving problems, I think you should be just laser focused on, these are my biggest problems, these are my biggest operational bottlenecks, these are the biggest roadblocks for my people, and start there. and figure out the best way to solve the problem, whether it involves AI or not. That's first. A lot of times, though, it does. There is a lot of manual process. There's a lot of distributed data. There are a lot of places where you can reduce the cognitive burden on people and on systems and really free up some of that just menial time for people to make high-level decisions and to be able to do it faster and better and have a little bit of an AI check to go along with the human. But I do think that there is a case for enterprise AI tooling. And so in cases like, for instance, ChatGPT, if you are, especially in a headquarters organization, especially in a government headquarters organization, there's a lot of time that is spent on knowledge management, even manually. A lot of requests that go out, hey, what do we think about this topic or that topic? And a lot of times it's really hard to find the knowledge that you're looking for. But if you're leveraging an LLM and you make a conscious effort to train it, then if you answered something once, it's answered again, and it can be put in the context of other things. And so that is something that could save people a lot of time and agencies a lot of money on things that people don't enjoy doing. A lot of folks do not enjoy being an action officer running around trying to grab the thing that might have been answered last week. But there's also things like Power BI and Copilot that a lot of enterprises have or can get relatively easily, where all of a sudden your software developers they're more efficient and effective. They have a partner that can check their code, that can write their test scripts for them, that can do some additional testing, kind of bounce ideas with them, and so it's a really great use case in general for that workforce. It has other applications for non-developers as well. And then for Power BI or things like it, you kind of empower your workforce to say, I don't necessarily have all of the answers to the best AI use case, but you are doing your job every day, and you are empowered to get rid of the things that you do not want to do that a machine should be doing for you, or to automate different parts of the workflow. I do think that it is really important, though, to think about AI even more when you're thinking about really complex systems. So we already think of, we were talking about integration earlier, if you think of a really complex problem, like border security, you have a really long border, you have disparate sets of sensors, sometimes by different companies, you have different groups of officers who are trying to watch their part of it. And trying to do that across stovepipe systems, it requires a lot of communication. It's possible that you could make errors. Luckily, we have some amazing people working those missions. But if you were able to integrate those well, get old and new to integrate properly, and then layer data AI on top of it, you could absolutely more optimally route things, more easily communicate things, and get the exact data in the hands of the person that needs to action it now.
Lauren, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me.
All right. Thanks, Francis. Great to be here.
You can read more about AI in government on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the forgotten side of the government shutdown. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
Ultimate outcome we're trying to get to is trust in the data, and trust is measured in a few different ways, right? It's in the integrity and the data quality, it's in the accessibility of the data, all of that matters, right? And if we have that, we can use it without question.
The explosion of AI has changed the trajectory of cloud. It's changed at least my strategy on how we wanted to build cloud. It's in a data environment, and how do we control and manage that? And some of the capabilities, whether it be in chipsets or advanced technology within performance, is in cloud as opposed to in the data center, which we could not keep up with.
Welcome back. Federal government employees on furlough because of the shutdown are not the only people off work. Dozens of vendors that serve the federal government say they're getting more and more stop work orders because of the lapse in appropriations. Jim Carroll is Chief Executive Officer of the Professional Services Council. He's former Deputy White House Counsel and former General Counsel at the Office of Management and Budget. Jim, welcome. Thanks for joining me. What's the feedback you're getting from your members and other members of the vendor community about how the shutdown's affecting them now and how they expect it to affect them as it proceeds?
Francis, first off, it's great to be on with you. Our member companies are definitely worried. we represent 400 companies, probably close to 1 million workers across all 50 states and territories. And the concern is they're just not going to get paid. There is a federal law that federal government employees get repaid when the government restarts. There's no such protection for the federal contractors who are providing innovative solutions every single day. With that, without the pay, that really puts a real harm to our companies, especially the small to medium-sized companies. Cash flow is negatively impacted, and then in the long run, depending how much longer this goes on, we could actually see some companies shuttering.
Mm-hmm. One of the outcomes of the 2019 shutdown was exactly that. There were a number of companies, small businesses especially, that just didn't make it because of the cash flow situation that you just mentioned. At what point can one think, if someone's sitting, for example, in an acquisition job inside the government, can someone think, I don't know if that company will still be there when I come back to work and resume work with that company?
Yeah, the larger companies can move people around, maybe to a contract that is still up and running. But some of the smaller companies, and you've been talking about AI on the show already, some of those innovative companies that are working there don't have the ability to stay up and running. The impact is just devastating, and really it's not just for the members, it's not just for the employees, either of the contractors or government employees, but it's really the entire American people, all of the constituents. And of course, my 1 million employees are also voters and constituents, but it's also American citizens who don't get the benefit of the government up and running that they are entitled to. And so that's what's really disappointing. And regardless of how long a shutdown lasts, there's a lapse to get the government up and running again, and how long it actually takes to be at operational efficiency. And typically, for every day of the shutdown, including the weekends like now, there's a 3 to 5 day delay for things getting up and running. So right now, we're already just about at a month, Francis, for the government to be operational 100% again.
Mm-hmm. What are your vendors telling you that they prioritize during a shutdown, and what do they do to make sure they're ready to go when the government's ready to go again?
Yeah, as the leading voice, for the industry, and I've been in and out of the government my whole career. I'm born and raised inside the Beltway. What we're telling them, of course, is to stay in touch with the contracting officers, getting the latest information. What's worrisome in some of these departments and agencies, the contracting officers have been sent home. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing for our member companies, we're having checklists, we're having almost daily meetings with them. And one is to be ready the day the government comes back, is they're going to be expected to go to work. So keeping notes, keeping track of the deliverables, and making sure that when that is CR, at least, if not a full year, is signed, that they're ready to go to work that day and get back to work for the American people.
What are the questions that the contracting base brings to you and others that have expertise in these areas?
Maybe the same question I'm going to ask you, Francis, is when will the government reopen?
Right.
And so, that's certainly one of the questions. And we are meeting with the government, with the White House. We've been going in and out quite a bit. And we're explaining to them the overall impact to the economy. You referenced the 2018 to 2019 35-day shutdown. That was a permanent loss of $3 billion to our GDP. It's gone forever. And that's what we want people to understand. And so they're coming to us asking, when is the government going to get restarted? How can I get back pay for our workers? And there is no law that protects them. And how can we make sure that we survive even in the short term? And so we're trying to help our companies, like I said, move to another contract, move to something else, maybe do training, do the things that they've been putting off a bit to take care of those, and keep your federal ID handy, because God willing, they're going to walk back into a building pretty soon.
Well, there was an effort in the wake of the 2019 shutdown to try to get contractors back pay. Have you seen any indication that that effort will restart, or would you like to see it restart, or maybe it has already restarted?
We are certainly trying to restart those conversations. Our employees, just like the federal government employees, are innocent. They're an innocent bystander in a political fight. And they want to work, the federal government employees want to work, but they're being locked out. And that's not fair to anyone. And so it's fair that if there's a disagreement, and we're not taking sides on the disagreement, but if there is a disagreement, don't penalize the people that need it the most. They're worried about food on the table.
What is the best possible outcome short of getting back to work. What's the best possible thing that can happen for the vendor base in your view?
For the vendor base, it's recognition that they're entitled to the full realization that they're providing innovative solutions. We're doing our companies, just like you talked about AI. Our member companies are involved in artificial intelligence. We're involved in the financial tech sector, cybercoin, Bitcoin, stablecoin. You name the sector, we're involved. We're involved in healthcare. Our member companies provide the Social Security checks that go out to individuals. We're an integral part of the government. We're proud to partner with our federal government employees, and we're entitled to those same benefits.
Jim, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for being such an institution in D.C.
You can read more about the shutdown's impact on industry on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. You'll get guidance and advice on managing in the federal government through the shutdown on the Fed Gov Today podcast every day for as long as the shutdown lasts. Leaders who've dealt with past shutdowns and past restarts will help you prepare for what's ahead while the government's closed and when it reopens. To make sure you don't miss any of those shows, follow the Fed Gov Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your shows. And you can listen on demand at fedgovtoday.com. Fed Gov Today will be back in a moment. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, IAC's Imagination ELC is coming the end of the month. It's one of the biggest events every year that connects government and industry. It's happening at the Hershey Lodge in Hershey, Pennsylvania, October 26th through 28th. You can read more about it and see who's coming at fedgovtoday.com/events. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Have a great week. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the FedGov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today.